Welcome to this edition of Rattling the Bars. I'm your host, Mansa Musa. It might sound odd, it might sound strange, it might even be mind-boggling to believe that in this country, these United States of America, slavery is still legal in some form, shape, or fashion. The 13th Amendment of the Constitution of the United States codifies slavery under the circumstances that anyone duly convicted of a crime, they can be a slave. They can be held accountable as a slave. Their labor can be processed like slave labor, and they have no rights to say nothing about that. Joining me today are two extraordinary men in this fight to abolish slavery. And I was amazed when Jeronimo reached out to me. We had talked before, and I was amazed when he reached out to me and they came full circle on their strategy on how to eradicate slavery as we know it. And so I'm going to let them explain it. Introduce yourself, Jeronimo and John.
Right on, man. Jeronimo Aguilar here. I go by Jeronimo. I go by Jeronimo. Either one is fine with me. I'm a Chicano activist, also organizer with All of Us Are None Sacramento, and also a policy analyst with legal services for prisoners with children. I'm just honored to be, as a servant to the movement, man. And I'll pass it over to John.
My name is John Cannon. I also go by John. I'm also an organizer with All of Us Are None. I'm out here with the Oakland chapter, and did 10 years in incarcerated. So being able to get out and just fight for the same things I saw behind those walls, just gives me a real purpose.
Okay, and we've all of us probably been in this space where you bring an expert witness in to court to testify. Before the expert witness testify, they go back, they run a list of all the things they have accomplished in terms of qualifying them to be an expert. So it suffices to say we're an expert in this matter when it comes to being slaves or being on the plantation under the prison industrial complex. But Jeronimo, let's start with you. All right. I want you to give us a history lesson on how the code that came into existence that legalized slavery in California. Because you made an interesting observation, and before, and we was talking about it again, how we got this perception of California as being the big Hollywood, Rolls Royce.
Yeah, thank you, Manson. Yeah, no, you're right, man. We got this idea of what California is. Not only the palm trees and the Rolls Royce and It's Always Sunny, but also that we're soft on crime, and that criminals are out able to just do whatever they want out here, and there's no law and order and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. The reality is the prison industrial complex out here is crooked and oppressive as it is in any state of the union. And so when you talk about especially this exception clause, and specifically here in California, it's the exception to involuntary servitude. But like we say, as you can see on my background there, one of our main messaging points is that involuntary servitude is slavery.
That's right.
So they try to lessen it or give it a fancy name. But the reality is the practice is the same thing of subjugating human beings to work against their will. Mm-hmm. And so when you talk about involuntary servitude in California, the history, like you mentioned, it goes all the way back to when California became a state. So back in 1849, remember this territory here was territory of Mexico up until then. You had the expansionist, I wouldn't even really call it a war, but an assault on Mexico.
Come on.
1848, which ended with the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. That treaty was not, honored or like most of the treaties that the U.S.
Yeah, that's right.
with folks of indigenous ancestry, them treaties were nothing but opportunities for the forked tongue, as they say, mm-hmm. to get what they want. And so what happened is, the land was taken, and indigenous mixed with Spanish, folks became immigrants overnight. And with that said, what you started seeing was the first Constitution of California in 1849 has that exception clause that we see today. It says that involuntary servitude is prohibited except for punishment for a crime. It's not that exact wording, but
Right.
it's the same exact practice, right? And so that set things up. That set the stage for 1850. You started seeing this. So this is like autumn, the year right after it became a state and the Constitution was introduced. You see the 1850 Act for the Government and Protection of Indians, and again the forked tongue, right? The way that they name the act, you would think, oh, they're protecting Indians, when in fact it was a vagrancy law that they used to criminalize indigenous people, and subsequently enslave them under the exception to involuntary servitude. And so I want to add too that indigenous peoples were already being enslaved by the Spanish colonial powers. We talk about the mission system. So the Southwest and California, a lot of it was already built by the enslavement of indigenous peoples. When you talk about colonization, and once the Spanish came and that era of terror, and then Mexico getting its independence, and you've seen Mexico actually outlaw slavery for a period of time, while that practice of servitude was brought back once the U.S. Took the land from Mexico. And so, like I said, from 1849 on, you've seen, up until now, you've seen the consistent criminalization
That's right.
of indigenous brown folks. Later, obviously, our African brothers and sisters that were enslaved and brought to this continent, and also that ended up migrating, trying to find free states, trying to find places where they can actually, be free from the subjugation of slavery, only to find, the same kind of practices happening over here in the Southwest. And so, following that 1850 Act of Government and Protection of Indians, which actually turned what's now LA Federal Courthouse, was a vibrant slave auction.
That's right.
Based on that law. You saw acts like the Greaser Act, which passed in 1855. It's another vagrancy law. If you looked at the actual statute, the statute reads dealing with the issue of those of Spanish and Indian blood.
Right.
And so really you talk about folks like me, Chicanos, Mexicans, those that are of Spanish, or Latino and indigenous ancestry. And so again, following that, I believe it was 58, 59, you saw the a Fugitive Slave Act. That was
right.
And a lot of you are familiar with the Federal Fugitive Slave Act, but California had its own Fugitive Slave Act that they passed. Don't quote me on those years, but it was definitely in this era of oppression. And in that Fugitive Slave Act, what they did is that they gave slave owners from the South a year to recapture their slaves. They came into that ran off to California looking for freedom. Well, that 1 year that they gave them actually turned into a sunset clause that ended up lasting 5+ years. And basically anybody that was African American, that was Black, that was here in California, could be kidnapped and trafficked back to the South without any evidence. All the slave master had to say was, "Oh yeah, he used to be my slave. He ran off. He didn't need no proof. He didn't need no nothing, just by his word." And they were capturing folks that never had even been enslaved.
And I think the point that for and benefit for our audience, I think you make the case well. You well represent the case of how they codified laws.
That's right.
To make sure that this exception clause could be enacted under any and all circumstances. John, so now we at a place where, in terms of y'all organized around the abolishment of slavery, the legal form of slavery as we know it now. Talk about y'all Proposition 6, John.
So Proposition 6 would us actually be reversing Article 1, Section 6 of the California Constitution, which is basically just like the 13th Amendment of the United States. So Proposition 6, what it would do right now is give a person autonomy over their own body, give a person choice whether they want to work or not. Because as it is now, you have no choice whether to work or not. So Proposition 6 would prioritize rehabilitation over forced labor. So what that would look like is, if right now as it stands, if you're inside and you're working, they assign you a job automatically. And whether you want to do college courses or rehabilitative courses or anything else, you're not able to, because you're assigned a job. You don't get to pick the job. You don't get to choose if you want a job. If you're assigned the job, you have to do it. So if you did want to say take anger management course or seek anything to rehabilitate yourself, and that aligns at the same time as your job, you have to go to that job or you'll be punished for refusing to work. Whether you have a death in the family, you have to go to work or you'll be punished for refusing. And all these cases happened to me while I was incarcerated.
That's right. That's right.
So like, and you're getting punished for refusing to work. You're losing days off your sentence. You're losing phone time. You're losing all type of things if you refuse to work. So Prop 6 would actually give a person their own choice over their own body, over their own rehabilitation.
Okay, let's talk about this, and both of y'all can weigh in this. You can go first, Jamal. Okay, I understand what you're saying, and I come out that space. I did 48 years in that space. So now, how do y'all address, or how will y'all address? We know Proposition 6 coming to effect, but we also know that prison has become like privatized on multiple levels. The privatization of prison is the food service is private, the commissary is private, the industry is private, the way the clothes is being made, everybody has like then got involved in terms of like putting themselves in a space where they become a private industry. How will Proposition 6 address that? Because what's going to ultimately happen, the slave master ain't going to give up the slave freely. They're going to like create some type of narrative or create some kind of forceful situation where, if you don't work, you ain't going to get no days, and you can come over here and work. And you see where I'm going at with this?
Yep.
So how, did y'all see that? Do y'all see it as a problem, or have y'all looked at that and be prepared to address it?
No doubt, man. So I think that this is really the first step, right, for us, because it's going to be a long road. And those of you that have, those of us that have been incarcerated or have fought against the carceral system, that every time you do something, they're going to figure out a way to retaliate. Going to find a way to try to circumvent it. You're going to try to find a way to basically make whatever you're doing obsolete so they can continue their practice. And so on our end, it was a really long and tedious process with the language. But we wanted to make sure was that we weren't just passing something that was symbolic, that ended up just being, okay, we're removing some words out of the Constitution. We all feel better about ourselves, and people that are incarcerated are going through the same conditions.
Yeah, status quo. Go ahead.
Status quo, exactly. So the language in in Proposition 6 and what was ACA 8, when we passed it in the legislature to get it on the ballot, actually says that any person that's incarcerated cannot be punished for refusing a work assignment.
Okay.
So what that does is it's not going to stop CDCR from definitely trying to circumvent things, but what it does is it gives folks a pretty strong legal stance, right? So if they do continue to be forced to work and disciplined for refusing to work, they can go to court. And we feel with the language that we now have in the Constitution, which is supposed to be the highest letter of the law, they're going to have a pretty strong legal stance to stand on when they get to court. So all of those things are going to be, we're going to have to be following and monitoring things get implemented. You know what I mean? Because we know that, like you said, man, they're not going to just give this stuff up. All of the money that's being made, California, fifth largest economy. CDC got a $14 billion budget. You know what I mean? And so that money, I mean, what we've seen here in California, Matt, is we've literally reduced the prison system. I mean, we're under 100,000 now. We're at about 90,000 incarcerated people, and their budget has gone up. So
Yeah,
make that make sense.
yeah.
It's like they're
And
figuring
tell
out ways to make money.
and tell our audience what CDCR is.
Yeah, that's California Department of Corrections. The R is for rehabilitation. And like John says, CDCR, we really call it CDC, but we're trying to get that R to actually mean something by having rehabilitation, access to rehabilitation, education, and other things be prioritized as much as forced labor or as much as labor, giving folks the opportunity to work. Because we know folks are still going to want to work inside. I mean,
Yeah,
we're not trying
yeah.
to take away that opportunity for folks, but you shouldn't be forced into a job and then you want to take a class, but you're not able to because of that. They're prioritizing that exploitation over anything else.
Hey, John, and talk about the feedback that y'all got from the inside in terms of like educating the population about what is expected, because ultimately it's going to be on the inside that's going to be monitoring the effect of the legislation. It's going to be on the inside that where we know from our own personal experience that we create programs to help us rehabilitate ourselves and to socialize. So this would be a golden opportunity for that kind of initiative on the part of those of us that still behind the walls and still on the plantation. Talk about that, John. What kind of feedback are y'all getting from those of us that still on the plantation?
Yeah, so we have members on the inside, and some of the feedback we're getting is got a lot of letters that were written to us about people's personal experiences, and it was a lot similar to mine. I understood a lot of what people were saying, and how some people, they want to prioritize being able to continue their education. They want to be able to, do stuff that's actually going to help them for when they get out, so they are rehabilitated when they get out here into California on the outside world. And also, some of the feedback we're getting, just like Jeronimo said, is that this doesn't mean people are just going to stop working. There's a lot of people that there's a waiting list to get on some of these jobs in prison. So it's not the fact that people don't want to work. People do want to work, but for those that people don't want to be forced to work. Some people want to prioritize certain courses that are offered. You have anger management courses, you have drug rehabilitative courses, and you can't even access these courses if you're assigned to job duty. So if those courses are there for no reason, if you can't access them. So this is some of the feedback that we're getting from the inside from our members.
All right, and Geronimo, talk about where we at in terms of how y'all assessing the Proposition 6, because you don't have no opposition. That's a given, because I think I was looking at some of the footage, and I think the sister from the ACLU say, who gonna come out and say we agree with slavery? So we talk about where we at in terms of or where y'all at in terms of getting this passed or getting people to vote on it.
Yeah, it's actually, so those of us that worked on the legislation, right? ACA 8, it was ACA 3 once upon a time, 3-4 years ago, and it failed in the Senate, in the California Senate the first time around. We brought it back with ACA 8, and man,
what's ACA?
Assembly Constitutional Amendment.
Okay.
And so the author of the bill was Assemblymember Wilson. She was in the assembly. Before her, it was Assemblymember Sidney Comlager, who's now in the actually in Congress, I believe. So yeah, it was a couple of assembly members that had brought it up. So there were ACAs, and just the fact that it failed one time, it showed us that it's not as much as an afterthought as folks think, as you would think, especially here in California. And I mean, it goes back to like that history that we were talking about, man. I mean, shoot, California's first governor was actually a slaveholder, man, Peter Hardeman Burnett. You talk about the founder of San Quentin was a California senator named James Estelle, and he was also a slaveholder. So that I think a lot of the stuff that we have, even subconsciously in the population here in California, they don't understand that they're aligning with. Sometimes it's not so much of like who's going to agree with slavery, but they buy some of this stuff that the Tough on Crime or CDCR puts out around. Oh yeah, well that's true. They should work, man. They're criminals, or they should do this and that, and they're not understanding that they're actually buying into the whole thing on slavery. And so with the proposition itself, man, it hasn't polled as high as we would have liked. I could have told you that because ACAA was so hard to pass. I knew it was going to be a struggle. And then here in California, man, we're in a pretty big crisis as it comes to the criminal justice reform.
That's right.
You got Proposition 36 that's on the ballot as well, which is trying to repeal some of Prop 47, which was a landmark proposition that we passed that reduced a lot of felonies down to misdemeanors.
Right.
It allowed folks to not have to end up in the prison system for low level offenses,
Right.
nonviolent stuff, drugs, stuff. I mean, stuff that it's just it's common sense, man. That
fueling the plantation. That's
exactly
fueling the plantation. So y'all got that. Y'all been successful at like taking the source away from where they're getting the labor from, and then y'all killing the utilization of the labor.
Right.
Y'all been fighting on all fronts. Yeah.
You've been fighting on all fronts, and they're pushing back though.
Yeah, most definitely.
The system is definitely pushing back, and we're feeling it right now, man. With Prop 36 on the ballot, and it's being funded by. I mean, and this is to your point, Mansa. We just learned that Walmart dropped another $1 million to support what's going on with Prop 36, right? And so why would Walmart be so invested in making sure that tough on crime passes, that more prisons get filled up? Well, that's because they rely on that labor.
They're right.
Exploiting that labor. They're using that labor of Black and brown people. And so people need to see this. I mean, what I'm hoping this episode really is public education for folks, so they could really see, even in a state like California, it's so invested, man, and married to the idea of exploitation and cheap labor. California and the U.S. has never lost its appetite for cheap labor, man. And so when you think about it, it's going to find ways to do that. It's always going to kind of go back to the same thing that it knows. And so that's what we're seeing. So Prop 6, man, it's polling right. It's probably, we're like at 50-50 right now. I mean, we're a little bit on the side of the last polling that came out was not favorable to us, but I think that we're getting closer to that 50-50 range. It's going to be a tough drag out fight. I think really the thing is the real positive is what we're seeing, that there's a huge percentage of folks that are uneducated on this subject. And when you're able to explain the stuff that we're talking about here, and all these different, actors are at play, with the corporations and, all these different, people that are making money, and they don't care about the regular, person that's struggling to pay his bills, even if he hasn't been locked up, but he don't care about that taxpayer. Prop 6 actually will benefit the taxpayer because they're getting a return on their investment in the criminal justice system, man. You got $133,000 it costs to incarcerate somebody for a year. And our people in there, they're not learning how to read. They're not learning how to write. They're not learning nothing, man. They're just being forced to make money for these corporations, man. So, once they start seeing all this stuff and we're able to educate them, we're able to move them to a yes at a pretty good rate, man. So I feel confident.
Okay. And John, you say you in Oakland, right?
Right.
And so what are y'all doing now? Because just like Jeronimo said, it's the fight to the finish. So the fight is, we know the election's coming up in November, but we know that we have to educate people to understand what the prop is, and now how to counter the opposition. What are y'all doing in Oakland to get the vote out, get people out to respond to the proposition?
The main thing we're doing in Oakland is educating our folks on slavery, on the history of slavery and involuntary servitude, the history of what our Constitution is, and also getting people engaged with voting. There's a lot of people that haven't voted, making sure people know their rights in California, because we've been encountering a lot of people that didn't even know they could vote. People on parole could vote.
Right.
You could, in California, you could vote on parole. Technically, you're allowed to vote while you're in jail. You just can't vote in prison. So that's the main part, is making sure people know. Even myself, when I was released from prison, I didn't know I could vote until I came to All of Us or None. And we were actually one of the organizations that was on that proposition to get people to vote on parole.
Okay.
So,
All right,
so
and as we close out, this for both of y'all. All right, so what do we expect in November, based on y'all taking the temperature of the climate out there? What can we look forward to? And then two, how can our viewers and audience become more involved in the process of getting Proposition 6 passed? We'll go with you, start with you, Jeronimo.
Yeah, man, I think I'm hopeful. I'm very hopeful about particularly Proposition 6 in California. Like I said, we're there's an all-out assault on criminal justice reform happening right now in California. So it's a tough time, man. And this last legislative session, I mean, it was probably, the 4 or 5 years that I've been working on the policy side, trying to pass statewide bills at the Capitol. This is probably the most challenging year. I mean, the majority of our bills just didn't make it through the legislature.
Right,
So
right.
for us to pass ACA 8 in a climate like this, I mean, it shows you, we got some very talented and skillful organizers. And so
Mhm.
I have that same faith and confidence in them that we'll get Proposition 6 passed. God willing, we can defeat Proposition 36 as well.
Mhm.
But with that said, I think the way folks can activate, we have a website, vote yes, prop6.com. Folks can check us out there. We also got our organization's website, prisonerswithchildren.org. And then on social media, man, all of us are none action is basically housing all of our Proposition 6 work. And so, I mean, we're teaming up with some trying to get some influencers and high level folks out there to, get the word out, make sure they hit the polls and vote. We're doing big regional events out here in California on October 8th. We're doing a statewide day of action. So we're going to be in here at Sac State. I'm doing something at the University of Sacramento. UC Berkeley is going to have a big event. They're doing something out there in LA, Bakersfield, Stockton. So, I mean, all over the state, man. We're just, and like John said, the main thing, our mission as the Grassroots Ballot Committee is really to activate, our people, man, those that have been disenfranchised, you know what I mean? So those that typically don't vote, and they got every reason not to vote because of the way this system is designed. But at the same time, there's certain stuff that is important for us to get out and get active on. And so this is one of those, man. We have the historic opportunity to end slavery, and stop the forced labor and exploitation of our people inside, man. So
Okay, and John?
yeah, and I would just say spreading the information, spreading the knowledge as much as you can. And we have materials that we'll send out. If you're in California, you want to do any type of outreach, you can reach out to me at john@prisonerswithchildren.org. I can send you a whole package with materials, postcards, flyers, and just make sure we're spreading the information to everybody, and also getting people aware that voting is coming up. So, and it's important to vote. I know that I actually was one of those people that thought voting didn't matter. And I remember my sister, she told me what someone told her, what my grandma told her, and she said, if our vote doesn't count, then why they've been trying to take it for us since forever or keep us from voting. So it's just like, it made sense. So it does count. We got to get out there and just spread the news to everybody we can.
And I want to add this as we close out. It does count, but the reason why it does count, because of y'all. Y'all making it count. Y'all educating people on the importance of understanding how to utilize their voice. Y'all educating people on understanding where it came from, the history of their voice. But more importantly, y'all mobilizing people and franchising people to change and dismantle the prison industrial complex. Y'all rattled the bars today. There you have it. The real news and rattling the bars. I really appreciate both of y'all, man. Y'all really made me feel good today, because I'm one of those that was like cynical when it came to the electoral process. I was one of those that didn't believe in it, but then I remember what Tip O'Neill said, that all politics are local. But more importantly, y'all skill organization, y'all skill strategy has now enlightened people on how to be effective in raising your voice and voting to get effective change. Thank you. And we ask you to continue to support the Real News and Rattling the Bars, because look, this is the only way you're going to get this kind of information. Two skilled individuals in the state of California, Sunshine State, where they got big Hollywood sign up, but behind the Hollywood sign is slave labor. Now we got people that's challenging it and attacking it, and ultimately going to be like Jeronimo say, this is a historical event. This is going to go down in history as the few that tackled the many and won. I'm out.
Thank you so much for watching the Real News Network, where we lift up the voices, stories, and struggles that you care about most. And we need your help to keep doing this work. So please tap your screen now, subscribe, and donate to the Real News Network. Solidarity forever.